What is going on, guys? Welcome back to 4-0 Gaming. Today we're going to be talking about auto rifles. There's been a lot of talk in the community about which guns are the best. They're at the top of the meta right now in this season. And earlier this week we had a hard light nerf, which really kind of pulled it down a little bit and brought it in line with a lot of the other guns. And yeah, so now everyone's talking about which guns are the best, and we're going to take a dive into that, as well as which roles you should be looking for, what stats to prioritize when trying to pick up the best auto rifle for you, and hopefully help you a little bit in PvP and in trials. Also, just wanted to say thank you guys so much for all the support recently on the channel. We've been growing way faster the past 2 weeks than we have in our entire lifespan. So big shout out to all you guys who have been following, subscribing, liking, and everything like that. These videos do take a lot of time, so if you guys can drop a like, if it does help you out, that would be awesome. And let's get right into it. Okay, so at the beginning of Season of Worthy, auto rifles got a huge buff across the board, and specifically 600 RPM auto rifles became extremely strong and worked their way to the top of the meta. I would say there are 3 major auto rifles that are used right now. 2 of those would be exotic auto rifles, being the Osiris regime and the hard light, which just got a nerf this week. And the third one would be the Summoner, which is the new legendary auto rifle from Trials of Osiris. There's also a 4th option in the Galliard, which is extremely powerful as well and comes with some great rolls. But for the most part, you don't really see this nearly as much as you'll see summoners in competitive PvP. Because of that, we're going to primarily focus on the summoner and these 2 exotics in this guide. But everything we talk about can be applied to the other auto rifles as well. Let's take a look at some of the stats and what you're going to be looking for in the current meta for an auto rifle. For auto rifles, the 2 most important stats are commonly range and stability. Range is going to allow you to keep your damage numbers up while you move into medium and long ranges, while stability is going to help you hit more shots consistently at those ranges. Now in the current meta, I think range has really fallen off, and we actually did some testing on the Suros, the hard light, and the summoner to really see what effect range had on these weapons. And I was actually surprised how little of a difference it was making at different ranges. So my buddy Ghost and I hopped into a private match for a couple hours and did all the testing for this video. Big shout out to him for taking the time to help me out. All of the testing was done using a Darcy to calculate the range and then testing each number at each meter. Just a disclaimer, the actual in-game values are not rounded off numbers and go into the tenths of a point, but for the sake of simplicity, we rounded these numbers to make the data easier to work with. So first, let's take a look at the hard light post patch 2.8.11, which is the patch that introduced the nerf to the range and the ricochet effects. As you now see, there is damage fall off, but compared to the other auto rifles, it is very minimal. During our testing, we found that the damage fall off isn't going to be nearly as big of a factor as landing shots consistently at these ranges. I would say that to land shots consistently, you really are looking around the 40 to 50 meter range, which the damage fall off is only about 2 points. This gives you a huge advantage over other auto rifles like the Osiris regime and the Summoner at medium to long ranges, because their damage fall off is significantly more drastic. I don't want to dive too deep into all of this data for the sake of time, but I did want to put it up on screen for you guys in case you wanted to pause the video and take a look for yourself. We also tested 2 versions of the Summoner, one with rangefinder and one without, to help test the perk significance, but we'll dive into that later in the video. Now I'd like to stop on this graphic because I think it gives great insight on how little the range stat is actually affecting your weapon. Here we have 2 summoners, one with 50 range and one with 60 range, so a 10-point difference. And as you can see, the damage fall off is very little. In fact, about halfway through the damage fall off arc, you'll see that these numbers, after being rounded, come out to be almost identical, meaning the fall off distance 10 range has on these weapons is only a few tenths of a point, making it virtually useless. And even in the early fall off, you'll see it's only changing it about 1 point, meaning the only time these 10 range points will affect is when you're firing within that 1 meter difference. And since in most gunfights targets are strafing, you'll be moving in and out of these ranges anyway. I also find that the difference of only 1 damage point, if you happen to be standing within that range, has very little importance compared to landing shots consistently, which a stat like stability could help you do. Moving on, we have a graphic that compares both the close end and the far end of the spectrum of damage fall off for all 4 weapons. This can kind of give you a glimpse overview of how these guns compete against each other at range. As you can see, the hard light has a significant range advantage over the Summoner and the Osiris, especially at longer ranges. But that holds through all the way through the range fall off arc, which you can go back and see in the individual graphics. Now, in my opinion, this testing just proves that range just really isn't that important when I'm trying to find the perfect role for an auto rifle. Especially since when you get into the medium to longer ranges, it is so hard to consistently hit shots that those range values don't matter anyway. I would much rather focus on the stability stat, which is going to help me laser down enemies at much longer ranges, even if I have a little more damage fall off. My third stat priority would be handling, which will allow you to swap to the weapon faster if you're using a good special. This is especially important if using a sniper rifle, because in many cases, you'll miss the headshot, land the body, and you'll need to switch to your auto rifle to secure the kill. Finally, I would always take reload speed over magazine size, because most of these weapons have a large mag already, and I find that in most cases, if you can't kill them with the full magazine, they've either disengaged or you've already lost the gunfight anyway. Very rarely do I find that I wasn't able to finish a kill because I ran out of my mag. Now let's dive into some of the perk rolls you can get on these weapons. The Summoner has a great array of perks that can also be found on many other auto rifles. My number one pick for a barrel mod is going to be the Arrowhead Break. Most auto rifles don't have the best recoil value, and the plus 30 is insane for helping you manage the recoil and keep shots on target. The Summoner has a base recoil stat of 57, so adding on the 30 will be a great improvement. LightGG also recommends the Extended Barrel, which has the plus 10 range and the plus 10 recoil, but for minus 10 handling. But I would highly recommend looking for the Chambered Capacitor. This has the plus 10 recoil as well, but substitutes the range for stability. As I showed earlier, I just don't value range that much, seeing that it's only going to affect me by 1 meter or so. I would much rather have a more consistent shot and be able to land more shots on target in the medium to longer ranges. You also only lose 5 handling instead of 10. If you don't have either of those options, Extended Barrel will work, along with polygonal rifling and small bore. Moving into the second slot, which on the Summoner contains magazine mods, I think there are 2 standout options: high caliber rounds and ricochet rounds. I don't think either of these is definitively better than the other, as it really relies on your playstyle. Both mods feature plus 5 range, while the ricochet rounds has a bonus plus 10 stability, and allows you to hold down lanes by shooting rounds off a wall and around a corner, in the same way that has become very popular on the hard light. High caliber doesn't have the stability, but it does have the bonus of causing more flinch to your enemy. I have always found this extremely useful, as if you're strafing and flinching the enemy more, it's going to be much harder for them to consistently land shots. This becomes a bigger deal in the medium ranges, where it's already more difficult to land shots while holding down the full auto. In the third slot, we have 2 major options as well: the Dynamic Sway and Moving Target. Dynamic Sway has become very popular this season, and many would consider it the only option. However, I actually find that Moving Target can be just as good, if not better. Many people don't fully understand what Dynamic Sway Reduction actually does, as it doesn't increase your stability or the recoil of your gun at all. Instead, it helps keep your accuracy up as you continue the rate of fire. There are many videos out there that dive into this deeply, but essentially this helps the RNG of your bullets as it cones out of your weapon and down at further ranges. Moving Target is the other great option that in many cases I find could be better. This perk allows you to move faster while aimed down sights, allowing you to strafe faster, which makes it more difficult for the enemy to hit you in a duel. You also receive some of the targeting acquisition that you would gain off of Dynamic Sway with Moving Target. But pairing the increased movement speed along with a perk like high caliber rounds where you're causing more flinch makes it extremely difficult for your enemy to stay on target as they're being knocked back and you're strafing, especially at longer ranges. If you don't have the option for either of these perks, I would go with Zen Moment. Finally, in the last category, I would say again there are 2 major options. To many of your surprise, I would say Elemental Capacitor and Rangefinder. Now I would say Elemental Capacitor is the best perk on this gun if you are running a Void class. Many people have done testing on this, and the stability gained from this trait has been determined to be around 20 points. 20 points in stability is going to help you drastically when trying to maintain and hit shots consistently. I would say this is most useful for hunters, as Void is a very viable option in PvP, but if you don't want to sacrifice your Solar or Arc subclass, I think Rangefinder is a great perk as well. As you can see from the graphic I showed earlier, the Rangefinder perk increases your range values drastically compared to the actual stat value itself on the weapon. Our testing found that Rangefinder increases your range by approximately 10%, which is a huge bonus over the 1 meter or so you get from 10 range points. This perk also gives zoom magnification, which may sound like a waste, but it actually indirectly affects the accuracy of your weapon. Many YouTubers have done videos on these and in-depth breakdowns of how this works, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but essentially this zoom magnification increases those cones I was talking about, allowing your shots to be more consistent as you move into the medium and longer ranges. You could check out some of those other in-depth breakdowns if you want to know the complete science behind it, but just know with the increased zoom, it's going to help your bullets be more consistent. Finally, I want to talk about celerity for a second because I know a lot of people love this perk and find it extremely valuable. And yes, I do agree, if you can get it to proc and you happen to be the last living member on your fire team, this is extremely strong. But I just find the situational use of this to not be worth it. Let me explain. If we're talking about trials, most of the time I find myself in a situation where the other team has multiple enemies and they're aping me. In this case, it is very unlikely that I'm going to be able to use my auto rifle to kill off 2 or even 3 enemies before they're able to kill me. I would say 99% of my 1v2 or 1v3 clutches is because I used specials such as a fusion rifle, shotgun, or sniper. Not because I was able to gun them all down individually with a primary. I also hate the idea of choosing a perk where its intent is that we're already in a bad situation. I'm not going into trials games expecting to be the last man standing on my fire team. And if you're playing from that position, you're probably not winning many games anyway. I would much rather have a perk like Rangefinder or Elemental Capacitor, which helps me secure the first or second kill for my team, allowing us to have the advantage of a 2v1 or 3v1 situation, rather than having a perk that I may use once throughout a match, the one time I'm at a huge disadvantage to win the round anyway. Now that we've gone through the Summoner and all of its perk options, which apply to many auto rifles, I wanted to hop over to another popular legendary auto rifle, the Galliard. This gun has become extremely popular because of its ability to roll scope perks. Now, as we discussed earlier with Rangefinder, talking about the zoom magnification and how it can really help your accuracy, that also applies to scope perks. If you choose to use the Galliard or another auto rifle that does have a scope option, I would highly recommend a scope like the SPO-26 Front. This scope has great base stats of +7 range and 10 handling, and more importantly has a zoom factor of +2. As discussed earlier, this zoom magnification is going to stretch the accuracy cones, making your shots more consistent at medium to longer ranges. However, I would stay clear of scopes that have +5 or +6 zoom, as these may be great for hitting targets at long ranges, but they will significantly handicap you at the close range game because it will be difficult to stay on target while zoomed in, and in many cases you'll be forced to hip fire, giving you a significant disadvantage against your enemy. Finally, I want to talk about some other perk options that can also be useful, including the kill clip and outlaw combination, which can be very handy in 6-man gameplay, as you can really chain kills together and become extremely powerful after the first kill. I find this less valuable in 3v3 modes like trials, because in many cases there isn't a second kill that you can actively engage with after proccing kill clip. The same thing goes for Rampage, where I find that in a 3v3 mode, even if you can manage to get 2 kills off, you only have 2 stacks, and the odds of you being able to kill a third, or a third still even being alive, is low. So that's the full rundown, guys, on the stats and perks that I really enjoy and think are most valuable. Hopefully the in-depth breakdowns kind of helped you see why some things are important and why some things aren't. Hopefully the range helped as well. Past that, past those perks, past those stats, the guns kind of just come down to personal preference. Any of the 600 RPMs are going to be good. From a TTK standpoint, they all have a 0.7 time to kill, optimal time to kill. So extremely good right now in this meta. Past that, between hard light, Suros, Summoner, if you're using another exotic special, such as people use Bastion, or if you want it in the heavy slot for PvP, go with the Summoner. It's a great option for the second perk. If you're using the Revoker, lots of people using Revoker right now as the best sniper rifle in the game, go with the Summoner in the second slot. It's a go-to. Besides that, if you want, the spinning up on the Suros is extremely strong. That's my personal preference. You can get a lot of easy kills, like poking out, and like if you pre-fire and poke out, you can laser down lanes. The TTK on the last 12 bullets goes down to like 0.4, 0.47, something like that. It's like the quickest TTK out of any of the guns in the game. So it's just stupid. And on top of that, the healing effect that comes into play on RNG on kill is just insane. The amount of times that I've finished off a kill and another guy's pushing in to try and finish the kill on me, but I just got the healing back and now I'm at full health and now we have a fair gunfight, and maybe even more in my favor because he's expecting me to be low, so he's playing out of position. Just super extremely valuable, lets me continue to play and continue to help my team after securing a kill, so I don't have to back out and recover. Hard light, obviously the ricochet. People have been talking about the ricochet. We did some testing, which I'll show on screen right now. The ricochet numbers are still ridiculous. 34 to the head at close range, where it used to be 52, and it falls down obviously on the damage fall off as you work your way back, but it's still doing stupid damage. It's still going to help you secure kills around the corner if people are trying to back away while they're one shot or disengage a fight at the very end. It's still going to help you secure wins. It's still going to hold down lanes, especially when trying to pick up revives, and it's still extremely viable. You know, we're just playing trials all this past weekend, and no one was using Heartlight, which was to my complete surprise, especially on this map Anomaly. It still crushes, and it's still a beast. So definitely don't count it out. And hope this guide has helped. Be sure to subscribe for more. Drop a like if it did help you out. It takes a lot of time to put these really in-depth videos together. And be sure to let us know if you have any more questions in the comments. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.